Hi, I'm Nick Allen and this is Marooned and Attuned. Marooned and Attuned is a series of chats with people related to the areas of survival, bushcraft, outdoor adventures, exploration, primitive skills and that kind of thing. So why Marooned and Attuned? It's because I'm linking these chats to the idea of Alexander Selkirk, who was cast away on an island. He was left all alone and survived for over 4 years. Now, he found that he managed to survive through the use of limited pieces of equipment he had, also books that he had, and also by singing prayers which gave him inspiration. Because of that, part of the interview or chat will involve some questions about pieces of equipment, books and songs that would keep the people going and keep them inspired and able to survive. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, my very first guest to be marooned is Craig Mathieson. Now, Craig Mathieson is probably hating the weather at the moment. It is incredibly hot out there, and Craig is associated with polar exploration. He established the Polar Academy, which we'll talk about in a bit. He's the explorer in residence for the Royal Geographical Society, and more recently he's become a member of the Explorer Club 50. So let's find out a bit more about Craig and what he has done. Well, hi Craig, great to see you again after all of these years. It's a few years since we met in Galashiels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, you know, everyone who knows of you for your exploration, but what actually motivated you to become an explorer, and in particular polar exploration?
Glad you got the camera, because this is what inspired me to do it. This tatty old book here is called The Worst Journey in the World.
And not the plastic bag then?
Not the plastic bag.
Good.
So yeah, this was given to me by my high school, my head teacher at primary school, a guy called Jimmy Brown, when I was 12 years old. So it's a story of Captain Scott getting to the South Pole, and I thought that's what I want to do one day, get to the South Pole, take a team there. And went through high school just only wanting to be an explorer. Nothing else interested me. I mean, I'm a bit of a feral child, so I spent most of my time outside. So every weekend I'd be camping in the woods without a tent, just making shelters and that kind of thing, living off rabbits and trout, and just loving being outside. And then Monday back at school, you're just kind of imprisoned for the week, just waiting for Friday to come around again. So yeah, I think it was always in my blood, but that really sparked off reading that book.
Yeah, so that sounds like what I would consider a proper childhood as well, the being outdoors and exploring and gutting rabbits and so on. But it's not for everyone. Now, you mentioned Scott of the Antarctic as obviously being a major influence. Mm-hmm. Since you've been involved in polar exploration, though, have you thought about other people who are possibly even greater influences?
Yeah, I mean, Scott's still a legend in my eyes. I know a lot of people have a go at him, but I mean, guys followed him to their death. I mean, it takes a strong leader to keep that together.
Well, that's right. It was the same with Shackleton as well.
Absolutely.
But
people like Nansen.
I was going to mention Nansen.
Yeah. I mean, Nansen, some of the stuff that he wrote about in Farthest North is just, still holds true today, and teaching Amundsen all about what to do in the Arctic as well. I mean, I still train like they train, still eat like they eat, still use clothing similar to theirs. South Pole, I used canvas and felt boots like Amundsen, and they were great. -70, feet were absolutely toast. Because it's old, doesn't mean that it doesn't work properly. Some of the best kit I've ever had was originally designed by the Norwegians back in the golden age of exploration. So yeah, there's lots of heroes of mine, and modern heroes as well. People like Jeff Summers. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I think I might have read something about him, but he's not someone I'm very
He lives in a wee
with.
pokey cottage down in the Lake District, but he's actually led 7 expeditions to the South Pole. Just keeps everything under the radar. But I mean, absolutely genius polar explorer.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Nansen, because I think what was really good about him was the fact that he learned from the Inuit and indigenous people.
Yeah.
And that really helped Norwegian expedition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was a switched on guy, Nansen. And others, people like John Ray, again, learning from indigenous people when he went out to find what was left of the Franklin expedition. And it's about learning from the real experts, really. And that's where I learned my craft. Up in Greenland. I mean, I've been going up there for over 20 years now, learning from the true experts of polar travel up there. So yeah, it's all good.
Now, you mentioned about this idea of exploration and adventure being in your genes.
Yeah.
Do you think it really is in our genes, or do you think that we're also influenced by our geographical locations where we're brought up?
Well, we're a nation of explorers.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you find Scots everywhere, all corners of the world, and we've always explored. Yeah. It's part of living on an island. Yeah, you want to escape the island.
Not just Scots, British in general, and
absolutely.
Irish.
Yeah. Again, you always find an Irishman everywhere you go. So yeah, I think it is in our DNA to explore and seek out new places. It's what we are.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. You know, like obviously there are other nations that have great explorers, and I suppose the Norwegians or the Scandinavians have a similar, although they're not an island, they have a similar geographical and genetic influence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, since the dawn of time, we've been. Everyone moves from where they actually grew up, try to find the next place, the next best place. And it just never stops. I mean, when I come home from an expedition, I get itchy feet really, really quickly.
I bet your wife loves that.
Yeah, well, this year's been particularly, good in my eyes and particularly bad in everyone else's eyes, because I've done 3 back-to-back expeditions. I had one in mid-February up in Greenland, just guiding up there. Then we had a double Polar Academy expedition. Got back, and then 4 days later I was up doing a Northwest Passage expedition with dogs to the Franklin Graves, and that was a superb trip, absolutely superb. Then we had a wee break, and then we're going again on Monday back up to Greenland.
So you mentioned about the Franklin Graves. I think the history is a wonderful aspect of this as well.
Yeah, you could certainly feel it on that trip. I mean,
I can imagine
taking 15 dogs across the sea ice to Beechy Island, and then just seeing the vertical cliffs of Beechy Island, going around the corner and seeing the 4 graves just sticking out, it's horrendously bleak, and you could just imagine the terror and the Erebus wintered up there and how hard it must have been. But yeah, you could feel the history. I enjoyed every second of it. And it's proper Arctic. We were there for about 5 minutes before the first polar bear came out to say hello.
Now, I believe that when you joined the military, what regiment were you in?
I wasn't Army, I was Navy.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Senior service.
But the idea of that for you, I believe, was that you'd be going off to these amazing places, taking part in expeditions, possibly.
Yeah, well, back then, I mean, it feels like another lifetime ago, but back then, if you came up with an idea, the military would generally go for it as well. I mean, they encouraged exploration. And in the Navy, of course, we got to go everywhere. So, I mean, I was 19 and we got to go to South Georgia. So I'd done the Shackleton route at 19. And for me, I mean, I was reading the route in his book and then planned it that way. And it was superb. Again, you're walking in the footsteps of legends. And that sort of really gets your sort of motivation up to do something bigger and better next time round.
Yeah.
But yeah, the military was great for me. I mean, I used it to train and learn and work with brilliant people.
You learn a lot about teamwork,
Oh, yeah.
the necessity of not letting other people down, not being somebody that's going to cause problems for other people. And probably that's a major learning point that is required today.
Yeah, absolutely. The only bit sucks the war.
Yeah.
Everything else was great, and you make some brilliant friends. And as you say, I mean, everyone looks after everyone else. I mean, that's how you survive in there.
Well, that brings us to today, because this is really a full-time job for you now. But it must have been a massive worry for you to basically give up your civvy job to undertake an expedition, because there wouldn't be any guarantees for you.
No, there was no. Well, there's never guarantees.
Yeah. So how did you manage to make that transition?
I ignored every bit of advice everyone ever gave me. That's how I done it.
So is your advice to ignore advice?
Yeah, when it's from the wrong people.
Okay, so it depends on the people. Yeah. Very good point.
Yeah, I mean, I left the sort of finance world. And again, everyone thought it was nuts, where you're giving up a really good, stable salary, because finance, you don't do any work. You just charge people money and you get it at the end of the month. You don't actually work for it. And thought, well, giving that up.
Better be careful what you're saying. It's on film, you know.
I don't care.
My uncle was an accountant, and he gave the piece of advice: never trust an accountant. He hated being an accountant. He wanted to be out flying. He wanted to be a pilot, and eventually he got his way. But
no accountants want to be accountants.
Yeah.
It's just a thing, but they get trapped. You get trapped in that world of money and material.
Yeah, well, we can get trapped into any job, can't we?
Yeah.
And so it's amazing that you've been able to follow your dreams.
Yeah, and the kids were just wee when I gave everything up. But I must say, the day I went in and handed my notice in and walked out that office, I felt lighter every footstep getting further away from that office. And it was the best move ever made, and it's the wealthiest we've ever been since. Because as long as we don't measure wealth in money, if you measure it in happiness and satisfaction.
That's right. So long as you've got enough to buy the things that you need, and we need a lot less than we generally think we need as well.
Yeah, a good tent and a good stove and a good sledge.
Yeah.
That'll do you.
Right, well, with Marooned and Attuned, my idea for this comes from Alexander Selkirk, the inspiration, or arguably the inspiration, for Robinson Crusoe. Now, Alexander Selkirk was born not far from here, just across the Forth, really. He chose to be put ashore. He didn't like the captain on this ship. He didn't think the ship was going to last much longer. He was absolutely certain it was going to sink. So he was put aboard with the few possessions that he had. Now, if you were in that kind of situation, I don't mind if this is a polar island or a warmer island somewhere, but if you were put into that position, if there was one item that you could have with you, and preferably non-digital or electrical, which would it be and why?
A knife or an axe. Yeah, a cutting tool. Make shelter, make fire, hunt. You can do everything with it.
Yeah, as long as you can cut things.
Yeah.
But you also value your watch, don't you?
Yeah, that's my navigation aid.
Yeah.
My watch.
Well, that's the thing. Now, I suppose, people think map and compass, but compasses aren't always accurate, depending on all sorts of geological.
Yeah, so as long as the sun stays in the sky, then you've got a brilliant compass. Yeah. How many items are you allowed?
Well, I did say one, but
I'd rather take a knife than a watch. I suppose if it was Marooned, I wouldn't really care what time it was. I could still work it out.
Okay, well, to move on, right, in 2004, was it, you undertook your
Yeah.
solo expedition. I know you'd been to Greenland before because you were going up the summits of unclimbed mountains and things like that. Is
Yeah,
that
that
right?
was in the late 90s.
But the 2004 expedition, that was you unsupported going to the
No,
South
it
Pole.
was myself and Fiona Taylor.
Ah, okay.
And then we joined up with there was Denise Martin and Hannah McKean.
Ah, okay. So
Hannah McKean's legend now. I mean, that was her first trip, and I think she's done 6 or 7 trips now. And then later on the trip, there was a chap called Stuart from Waco, Texas, an Everest climber. And then he was with this incredible woman, Linda Bellhartz, became the first Australian to ski at the South Pole. Unfortunately, Fiona didn't make it. We had to do an evac out with her. But yeah, that was back in 2004. Again, another lifetime ago.
Yeah. Well, saying about Fiona having to be casevaced out, it's one of the things I was going to ask. You know, you must have come across all sorts of issues, medical issues being one of them. How did you manage in that kind of situation?
Well, you have your plan B and your plan C and your plan D in your pocket, just in case.
But no plan survives contact.
Sorry?
No plan survives contact, as they say in the military.
No, but yeah, I mean, again, I think I've just been lucky with Fiona. We hit a horrendous storm right at the beginning. I think first night was minus 50 odd inside the tent. And that's not very healthy.
No.
And she started to get frostnip, and hypothermia started to kick in. And I mean, got back to a place called Patriot Hills where there's a base there and doctors and everything. So she was well looked after, and she's had no lasting effects from it. I mean, her digits are all fine. On other trips, again, we learn before we go out. So if I'm doing a kayaking trip, I learn medically what could go wrong. So it's usually dislocated shoulders and that. So you learn how to put shoulders back in, learn how to set bones. If it's a polar trip, again, we do various medical courses, but best of all, we take doctors who really know what they're doing. So with Polar Academy, we take 2 doctors with us, a male and a female doctor.
You need that, especially when you've got other people to be looking after.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of covered for everything.
But I vaguely recall you saying about being on the radio to a doctor in, I don't know, Argentina or Chile to give you advice about how to deal with a particular injury or medical issue that you weren't prepared to be casevaced.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, I mean, it's ancient history, but sometimes doctors, when they're in a nice, comfortable office hundreds of miles away from you, they give advice without realising the situation you're in. And you're out there to do a job, so you just need to know how to fix things to carry on. For a lot of doctors think, well, you need to come out and go to hospital and do all that kind of stuff. That can be done later on once you finish the trip. Temporary fixes are fine. And all that was just a bit of sore toe. I had to fix up myself, patch up and keep going. But again, it was all fine, worked out fine.
Did you ever think about giving up?
No, not at all. In fact, I thought the complete opposite. I've had a food drop at the pole. I'm sure all of us would have just carried on. We actually spoke about it, just carrying on and just going right across the continent. We felt very fit, very motivated. I think I would probably have been divorced though if I'd actually done that. It's a long time away. I mean, South Pole, I mean, it's a couple of months really that you've got to be away doing it.
I can imagine.
Yeah. But you just get into the routine, and I mean, a lot of people talk about things being difficult and all that on expeditions, but I've never found that. I mean, I train really, really hard and have the right people around me and get the right advice from the right people. So when I go out on an expedition, I actually enjoy it. Enjoy every footstep of it. I just treat every footstep as a huge privilege. that's why I do it. I can't imagine doing these things if you're finding it difficult or hard. It would just be miserable. So that's why I've always got to have the next one, because it's a lot of fun for me. And again, always learning new stuff every expedition I go out on. I learn stacks more and just apply it to the next one.
Again, we're talking about learning. To get back to the Alexander Selkirk thing, in his possessions he had a few books. These would be to do with marine engineering and technical aspects. I'm not too sure which, and so he found that reading was very useful as well, whether it was for entertainment or just improving his knowledge further, which I think was more likely to be. I don't think there would be many fun novels. If there's one book that you could have with you if you were marooned, what would that be and why?
One book. I'm not a big reader, but I tell you what I love doing is writing. I'd probably have a blank journal and a couple of good pens and actually write rather than read.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'd have a lot to write about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I bet it wouldn't just be about doing things. I bet there'd be a lot of sort of almost philosophical and spiritual
you put
things in there as well.
When you write a diary properly, you write it for yourself, no one else. You put emotions in it of exactly how you feel at that time. So I mean, I've kept diaries since the start really, and it's only been Michelle, my wife, who's actually read them.
Yeah, so no chance of ever seeing the diary of Craig and Matt.
No, I get asked all the time to get them published, and it's like they're too personal.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep things personal.
Yeah.
Right, in I think it was 2006, you did a leather expedition and took a 16-year-old boy with you.
Now,
that must have been quite worrying in a way, because this is somebody that wouldn't be very experienced, wasn't fully mature mentally, doesn't matter how physically mature he was. That must have provided some difficulties even in the planning the whole idea.
Not really. No, not really. I didn't worry about it because I knew we'd be fine. Again, we trained really hard.
Yeah, and I suppose you can spend too much time worrying, and that if you let that overtake you, then
worry's just a big black cloak.
That
stops stuff. I mean, again, even though he was 15 when we started training, all I need in anyone that goes on an expedition is that spark and the eye, the want to do it. And with Chris, we had that, and so we just pushed and pushed and pushed.
And do you think you were lucky with them? Because a lot of youngsters, they might say, "Oh yeah, I really want to do something," but when the going gets tough, they can quickly back out.
It's how, I mean, Kim's been there with me. I never describe when it's tough.
We'll bring Kim in a moment.
For some adults that would train thinks a tough session, we tell the kids this is an easy session, it's going to be tougher and tougher. And we change their mindset to what a tough training session is. And that way we can just build and build and build. I mean, some of the weekly training we do with the kids is just incredible. The fitness levels they've got to get to. Then we double it. Some of the endurance training where they're out hauling heavy tyres for 30 kilometres in the driving rain and snow and all that. And we just tell them, we never say, right, today we're going out and we're going to try and do 30 kilometres. It's never that. The instruction is, today we're going out and doing 30 kilometres and you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be fun. And they do it, come back, and I've asked them again, right, we'll go out and do it again. Everyone will do it if I ask them to. And it's about mindset. It has nothing to do with physical side. Physical side is a doddle. Anyone can get fit enough to do these trips. In fact, you don't have to be that fit to be an explorer. It's about mindset, where you just keep going and going and going. And when things get tough in other people's heads, in other people's visions, you can just write that off and say, no, I can keep going for another few hours. This is actually okay, or I can sort that out tomorrow. But but today I've got to get to this camping spot. I've got to get there because there's water there, there's food there. I'm going to get there. And you just get that little whinge voice out your head and you put it away. Because all that does is make that rucksack feel heavier or that sledge feel heavier. So you don't need it, so you cut it out. And we train the kids that way, where we just build them and build them and build them. And then we prove it to them by occasionally going back to some of the training sessions we'd done at the beginning, and they realise that it's nothing anymore. They're not breaking a sweat, nothing. So when they go to Greenland, they're ultra fit. I mean, I can't do this with adults. Well, I've tried to do it with adults, and they can't get fit enough. Physically, they think they're fit enough. Mentally, they're not, and they struggle.
Well, I was going to bring up the idea of the Polar Academy, which you obviously touched on anyway, because I assume that came about after having done the expedition with the teenage lad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was always in my head from the South Pole, because a few days before the South Pole, I actually bumped into a young Polish boy called Jacek. He was dropped off with a couple of really famous Polish explorers. And he was an incredible young lad. I mean, I don't use the word inspiration often, but this guy truly was to me. He'd had an accident when he was 12, and he'd lost his right leg and his right arm. And again, kind of written off this young lad. So he had an artificial leg, so his stump was a mess. I remember seeing his stump. One arm, and he still dragged the sledge to the South Pole. To me, that's up there with everyone.
Well, that's the making of a true survivor, isn't it? You've got to have that in your head, that you're going to make it no matter what.
And again, it was just seeing this young lad's mindset, because again, he grew up being told what he couldn't do. But in his head, he knew that he could do this. And of course, he managed it. We had his 16th birthday at the South Pole. Brilliant party.
Well, I hope you baked a cake for him.
We shared salami and cheese, I think.
with candles in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, you've got to, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah, 16's a big birthday.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think we'll move on to a little bit more about the Polar Academy.
Yeah.
But from the point of view of one of your participants, one of your students in a way. So we'll go on to that now.
You didn't think you'd be doing this today?
I did not.
No. Neither did I. A lot of the times, I don't stitch the kids up. I just don't bother telling them stuff deliberately. So when I do big talks or stuff, I usually have a few kids along with me, and then get them up on stage to tell their story as well, so they get no notice of it at all. So when they do speak, they just speak from the heart.
Well, also, I think it's important that people, not just youngsters, but people in general, can be flung into situations that they weren't prepared for and learn to deal with that.
Yeah, and we do it with mothers as well.
Yeah. I'm very aware of that as well.
Yeah.
Right, we've got Kim join us now. As you can see, she's the one with the really nice smile. Now, Kim, would you like to tell us about your experience from the selection process for the Polar Academy through to your training and finally to your expedition?
Well, the selection was it was really weird, because we had a school assembly, and where Craig gave a talk and said, if you're interested in this, just write your name on a post-it note and put it on the wall. And then everyone pretty much just forgot about it for months. And I remember getting pulled out of my classroom one day, and we were just sitting waiting for something to happen, but we knew that there was news because there was quite a few of us, and they were like, well, you've been selected for the Polar Academy. And I'm like, what? And it took us a while to register, and I think that in that moment it was really bizarre, because I hadn't been picked for anything before, and we got to do the selection training up at Glenmore Lodge, which again, something I'd never done before. We were away doing stuff like getting tipped upside down in water, and rock climbing and canoeing, and it was just a whole bunch of activities that I'd never had the chance to do before. and it was crazy because you have this expectation of yourself. You're like, okay, this is my capabilities, because you don't push yourself out of that. And the second that you're in something that you've never done before, so you have no grounds of what you can or can't do, and then you show yourself up, you're like, oh, I've done this and I didn't expect to do this because I didn't know I could do this. And it's just, that one weekend was amazing for me. And then everything that followed that, the whole training where, like Craig said earlier, where you would go back and do training that you didn't at the start, and you're sitting there going, I can't believe I was like sweating and panting at this on the first day, because this is easy. I could do this 100 times over. And I think that again was a huge boost for your confidence in what you can do and your capabilities.
Well, a lot of my knowledge of teenagers comes from me being a teacher, but also I've led expeditions with Scouts, Duke of Edinburgh groups and other youth groups as well. Now, certainly at school, I think that people are very, very different at school to when they're in a group or a club. And a lot of students, I find, even if they want to do something, they're embarrassed to do it because of what other people would be saying about them. Did you find any problems with that? And when you actually were selected, did you find that other people were fairly similar to you in attitude?
Yeah. Well, in high school, I was in a drama group, and one of the people from my drama group actually went on the expedition with me, and we got really close together. But before, we were just kind of like, oh, we went to the same school, and we're doing this drama group, and we're friends through that. But then through this, we got closer because we realized that we were very similar, but we never really had a chance to actually get to know each other.
And just being part of a shared experience like that is so much better for bonding than, you know, going to the pictures or hanging about in the street, because it's real, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more like more memories than just doing something, because you can like go to the cinema with like your parents or by yourself, and it doesn't really make a difference with what you do. But like, if you actually spend time with people in a situation where you're both extremely unfamiliar with it, then you go really close.
And you rely on each other for safety as well. For instance, did you put fences up, anti-polar bear fencing and things like that?
We did, yeah. I wasn't the first couple of nights. I think it was Alex and Robin that did it.
Yeah.
And then they showed us how to put up the fences, and Craig pretty much just sat back. And I was like, okay, you guys got this.
Quite right too. That's the sign of a good leader.
Yeah, we don't guide them. We teach them to run their own expedition. That's how they grow.
Well, the thing is, if you do everything, or the adult leaders do everything, and the youngsters are just watching, they don't really learn.
Yeah. Or
they don't learn as well as they should do.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to be able to do things.
I need space to get my cup of tea while you crack on and do stuff.
Yeah. Like, going back to the watching is different from doing. I remember when you were showing us how to spark the thing, and you did it so easily, and we were like going, okay, this is going to be easy. And I'm sat there flicking the thing, and like there wasn't a single spark for a while. And we're like, come on, how did they do it? And I'm pretty sure once everyone managed to spark it, we're like, oh my god!
Is that the fire steel you talk about? Yeah, they're good bits of equipment, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, how do you feel that you changed as a person from before being selected to actually coming off the expedition?
It's really hard to put that into words, because I'm me and I see myself every day. So I saw myself through the Polar Academy, but it really helps to look back on, I guess, like past videos, because I was quite lucky to have my expedition recorded, and watching from the start, I can really see how much I've basically just come out of my shell.
So you feel a lot more confident about life in general?
Pretty much.
And about what you can do?
Yeah. Like, to start off with, my plan was pretty much to just get through school and then get through uni and then like job and just life, but like do it through the straight path. And then after about 5 years of high school, I didn't do 6 year. I was like, I don't want to go back, and I just left and went to college.
Yeah, but you'll find, the older that you get, the more people that you come across. Lots of people are big talkers, and when you're young, and I think even with a lot of adults, they believe what big talkers are saying. But when you've actually done things, you can say, actually, what you're talking is rubbish. I've done this and it was very, very different. I think that helps you develop as a person as well, real life experiences. Do you find that?
Well, I mean, everyone's experiences is different, and I've only done Greenland once. So if someone had like a wildly different experience, I like to sit and listen. I don't sit and judge people by saying, oh, that's wrong because we did this.
Well, I think that's a very good philosophy to have. I think it's a very good approach. And probably what I was saying that you're going to say, what a load of rubbish. And I think it's better to sit back, listen, and sometimes keep opinions to yourself.
I was just saying, when I first met you, there's no way we could get you to do this. Absolutely no way. You'd run to the hills.
Yeah, you'd have to take me in the chair.
So you said about different experiences, and you've only done Greenland. If you were going to go on some kind of expedition in the future, something very different, any ideas what you'd like to do?
Well, I'm in college for film right now, and my plan is to go to that with uni as well. So if I were to do something outdoors in a different country, like an expedition, it have to be documentary related, preferably animal documentary. So somewhere with like a lot of animals where you just kind of sit and like you see the behind the scenes of like the David Attenborough guys filming lions, and they're just sit in like this little tent, and I think that looks really cool.
That sounds good, and it would keep life very interesting, enjoyable, but also a massive learning experience.
Yep.
Right, well, thank you, Craig's computer. Yeah, it obviously didn't like what you were saying. Yeah, it's shocking. Right, well, thanks for that. We obviously realise the importance on personal development on youngsters. Do you think that it would be a good idea to have, as part of the school curriculum, some kind of expedition training and implementation, even if it was the Duke of Edinburgh Award, but as a compulsory thing?
Absolutely, yeah. Again, just for mental health alone, putting the physical side to one side, working in the outdoors, learning things about nature, learning about fauna, the animals around us. I mean, a lot of that knowledge is lost, or it's not there in the first place with teenage kids these days. So yeah, I mean, it would be a huge thing, and I mean, there's countless studies ever since the end of World War II about the benefits of outdoor education with youngsters. But as you know, I mean, being a teacher yourself, it's usually the first thing that gets cut is outdoor learning.
Well, that's right. It's down to financing as much as anything.
Down to finance. But yeah, it's huge, absolutely huge, especially in Scotland. I mean, one of the most beautiful countries on the planet, and our nature is incredible. But very few kids actually get to experience it. I mean, very few kids I know have been up in Cairngorms or anywhere on the west coast and been camping or foraging for the weekend. It just doesn't get taught anymore, or doesn't get taught a lot anymore. So again, we're making inroads into that as well. I mean, I think it's later this month we're speaking to MSPs about it. We've started Junior Academy, so that's going into primary schools, teaching bushcraft and doing bits and pieces with that. Again, just getting that sort of the values, what we stand for in Polar Academy, and they're much earlier with kids, and also the belief that they can turn their hand to anything as well.
It makes you realise the importance of organisations such as Scouts as well then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was a cub, I was a scout, I was army cadets, volunteer for everything.
I'm sure that when
And
I
it was
first
great.
met you, you were a Scout leader.
Yeah, I started up the Explorer Scouts here in Bo'ness, and it was great. We specialised in winter stuff, obviously. So when all the Scout camps closed for winter, that's when we started.
Quite right
Yeah,
too.
and
But
it was
I
great
recall
fun.
you saying for teaching navigation, you would only teach in the dark,
Yeah,
which means that you really have to hone your skills. You're
Yeah.
not looking at the ground to see where you're supposed to be going to. You're actually having to use your map and compass, aren't you?
yeah. You have to teach properly, and you have to learn properly, and always teach by example as well. And kids get very, very good at this very, very quickly. I remember teaching the beavers, which are really young kids, and they've been someone tried to teach them navigation before, and it's really hard if you say numbers to kids. So I taught them just in a little forest, but I rewarded them with treats. So I had chocolate, showed the pacing, and we only had 4 directions: north, south, east, and west. But when there's a reward to it, they got it like that. They were incredible, getting the pacing right, getting the direction right. And these kids, I can't remember, 7 years old. Absolutely.
I think beavers start at 5.
Is it 5?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
think
know
it's
they were tiny little munchkins
Yeah.
running through the forest, but they all sussed it, and it's just how you teach kids, put it in a way that they can learn it. Really, I mean, some of the things that I've heard about where kids say like, "Oh, someone's tried to teach me navigation. I just can't get my head around these grid references and all that." So, well, that's great for dropping bombs in World War I in trenches where you need grid references. To get kids confidence in navigation, it's not really the best way. Get them out on a hill, show them how to use a map and compass, and get them to navigate to lots of different locations. That's how to build confidence up in it. Then go out at night and do the same again.
And as you've already said, you find that your watch is one of the best navigation tools that you've got.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've always got to have a good watch.
Right, I'm going to pan over to Kim, and I'm going to ask you about the idea of outdoor activities at school. You know, would you like to have done, well, maybe you did do Duke of Edinburgh Award, would you have liked to have had something like that as part of the school timetable?
I would have absolutely loved to do Duke of Edinburgh. Like, that was my plan, was to do Duke of Edinburgh, and then like the whole lockdown happened, so I wasn't able to because, you know, pandemic, you can't really go outside, which I was really annoyed about. But that happened after Polar Academy. But if it was before Polar Academy, I don't know if I would have done it. I would have liked to have done it, but I don't think I would have been able to push myself to do that. So I feel like there needs to be a kind of ground for all kids. You know, outdoors is good, but PE 2 times a week when everyone is playing dodgeball and there's just a bunch of dodgeballs flying at my face, I don't think that is the equivalent of outdoors that, you know, would have been necessary.
Yeah, and do you think that understanding the natural world by getting outdoors is important for your personal development and knowledge?
Absolutely. Like, I've always been like an outdoors kid. Like, I grew up in a little area where there was a park and there was trees, and I would climb the trees with my little brother. But once school happened, that kind of got knocked down because, you know, don't climb on the trees, that's against the rules. And I would have loved to still know how to climb trees. Yeah,
we should just get rid of school and have things like Polar Academy and lots of other alternatives. That would be much better, wouldn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but people say that maths is the only subject that counts. That was a joke, by the way.
Don't get me started.
Unfortunately, the last piece of video of the chat didn't record. Obviously, user error. For that, I apologise. What was missed off, I'm going to explain, and that was asking Craig and Kim which song was the one that would inspire them most or help to tell their story. Before I get on to that, I'd like to thank both Craig and Kim for agreeing to seeing me for a chat, especially Kim, who was thrown into this. She didn't know it was going to happen. If you'd like to find out more about the Polar Academy, you can visit their website, which is thepolaracademy.org. Anyway, as I said, I asked both what the song was that would inspire them most or told us the story of their journey. For the life of me, I can't remember what Kim said. It was obviously a modern poppy song, and being an old person, I just didn't know it. However, Craig came out with a song which I know very well. The reason why he chose it was not just because it's a great song, but because he found the rhythm of it really helped while he's skiing, which is obviously really important on his polar exploration and moving across the ice fields and so forth. So anyway, here it is. Black Sabbath, War Pigs.
Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction. In the fields of bodies burning, as the war machine keeps turning, death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh Lord, yeah. When darkness world stops turning, ashes where the body's burning. No more war pigs have the power, and as God has struck the hour, day of judgment God is calling. On the knees the war pigs crawling, begging mercies for the sins. Satan laughing spreads his wings. Oh Lord, yeah.